Hey, good afternoon. This is Johny Hustle from the Lean Guys, and today I'm with David Cothran of CribMaster, and we are going to be talking about all kinds of things today that is going to be David's choice. And so with that, I'd like to introduce David, and David, take it away and tell me a little bit about yourself and about what it is you think we're going to be chatting about today.
Good deal. Well, good afternoon. This is Dave Cothran. As John mentioned, I'm the CribMaster representative. I've been with the organization for a little over 10 years, but spent most of my life in and around inventory management, supply chain management, those types of avenues. For those of you that don't know CribMaster, we are an inventory and asset management company that offers both a software and a hardware product line to help automate and streamline usually manual steps in people's processes.
Excellent. That's a very concise way to put that. And so, David, I know that you came prepared to chat about something. What's on your mind, my friend?
So I thought it'd be interesting. I've been around the industry for a number of years now, although my gray hair probably says a little bit differently. I've been around long enough to probably see some changes in the world and the environments and the things that we do. And here at CribMaster, we get asked a lot about vending machines, and I think the world as we know it thinks about a vending machine, and they think about our standard old-fashioned candy bar machines that are out there in the marketplace and plentiful as they are. So I thought the topic I'd bring today is, what is a traditional machine? What does it look like? Who's using them? Maybe what are they good for? Maybe what they're not good for. I thought I'd just kind of throw that out there on the table and let's have some dialogue about it.
Yeah, that's a great idea because, when we meet up with folks that say, hey, John and Mike, can you get us some of those vending machines? Our first question is always, well, let's talk about this a little more. I mean, the company that we talk about is really a software company that does a lot of point of view storage solutions, and vending machines are just one of those. So let's get into this a little deeper and talk about the topic of vending machines and how we should be talking to people about the good, the bad, the ugly of vending.
Yeah, that's great. I think it's a good starting point. And again, not to make this a sales pitch for CribMaster, but I get the same call from a lot of customers across the globe, across the nation, saying, "Hey, I've seen this box, I've seen this machine at a customer site, or someone told me about this machine, and I need one of those vending machines today." And I usually start that off by saying, "Hey, it's not a one-size-fits-all type approach." And there's many different boxes out there, and some of them are vending machines and those types of things. But I think it's important to know what they were originally created for. Right. And I still think there's value in that. I think the vending machine concept was originally introduced, some would argue in the exact time frame, but in the late 90s around a point of use device. And I think that's an important concept there because
yeah, absolutely.
Vending itself, from my perspective and my history and my experience, vending itself was originally introduced to get product closer to point of use. And the cost savings around just that theory alone of giving the product closer to where it's being consumed at typically has a pretty high rate of return. Nowadays, you could argue that vending machines are deployed for a lot of different reasons other than that. Sometimes they're deployed because it's a way of capturing business from one competitor to another. It could be the next cliche. Some people are tired of employees taking too much. They want to lock it up. So those are all avenues for vending machines to be used today. But the traditional vending machine, most people think about vending, they only see a coil-based application.
Right.
And I would say most of our customers are introduced to that concept of just a single coil application, and they don't really get to see what all else is out there. I don't know if that's the right word, but what all out there is in the marketplace. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I mean, and I'll give you a couple of cases in point. So as you know, Michael and I have done several different styles of machines out there. Some of them are so big that they're actually walk-in vending. You enter a door because it allows you to, because you've got the right credentials to be there. You pick out what you need in order to go do your job, and when you walk out, it tells you that yes, you were the right person to take that material, and it's for the right job, and it keeps everything accounted for, and it sends a signal back to, hey, we have some stuff that needs to be replenished. And so, and all of that very, very close to where the work needs to be done. In this particular case that I'm talking about is, in a dry dock of a submarine repair facility. So vending, it's still vending, and it's still
Yeah,
point of use, and it's still controlled, but there's no coils involved
correct.
with that whatsoever. Now, we also, in that very same customer, we did have coil machines in the machine shop that spit out, carbide cutters. So
Right.
we used all different kinds of vending machines. But you're right. You got to look first at what is your point of use need, and then what's the right machine or the right avenue to make that happen.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think there's value in traditional vending machines, and it may be helpful if I kind of classify what I mean by traditional vending machine too.
Sure.
Because there's lots of different shapes and sizes and technologies. You were just talking about a specific technology that has a little bit more automation than a traditional vending machine. But
Right.
in our world, we kind of classify a traditional vending machine as much more of a controlled access point. You typically have to authenticate at the device, and then you have to tell it something.
Right.
We walked in the break rooms in the airports all of our life and put $3 in a candy bar machine and hit B3. You had to tell it
Sure.
what you wanted. It didn't magically dispense. Those are traditional types of vending applications, whether it's coils, carousels, lockers, drawers. You typically have to do something and tell the system something in order to get something. And
That's right.
It's kind of a dumbed down approach, but that's about the simplest way you can kind of approach traditional vending machines, right?
Right.
Obviously the solutions you were just talking about, the industry's evolved drastically over the 10 to 15 years since point of use management has become more relevant. Now you have more passive ways of interacting, going up, authenticating, getting what you need, making it a single transaction much faster from a production employee. So there's lots of ways to do that. But I would still say traditional vending is relevant when you think about PPE.
Right.
Look at what's going on in the world today with COVID and what's happening with just our own industries alone, that now the vending machine is becoming a secure place to go get product, and maybe
that's
less
right.
touch points. So a coil machine may be a great item or a great solution to go get PPE that reduces some manual touch points that maybe can contract additional virus exposure.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we see that happening more and more, that people are using PPE that way, and really eliminating one more or many more touch points in between to try to stop the spread.
Yeah, exactly. I'd say traditional vending is probably what is most commonly known too. I think when I talk to customers, I would say probably 7 out of 10 customers, when they're calling and talking about point of use or vending machines with us, their educational value is really about a traditional machine, not really beyond that scope. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a great knowledge base compared to what we were 15 years ago, right? I mean,
Sure.
15 years ago, we showed somebody a coal machine in an industrial manufacturing plant, and they thought it was, something that just saved the world. It was so new and different.
Right.
And nowadays, most people are very educated about the devices that are out there from a traditional side, but not always educated about what else is out there. Does that make sense?
Sure. Yeah, it absolutely makes sense. And you were mentioning earlier that some of the companies that supply product, they start using vending machines as one of their entry points into a new client. Hey, not only can we give you everything that you want, but we can give you this machine, and we can put this machine out at the point of use. And as long as we're the ones that get to come in and fill it, then we're happy to allow you to have this box or a couple of boxes out on your floor. And we've seen that happening more and more and more recently.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's very true and very relevant with what's going on in our industry today, is that, our distributors use these as tools within their arsenal of services to potentially go out and deploy them and maybe get new business out in return for putting the device in. And
Sure.
it's a great tool for them to use as leverage. And then it works great to certain applications, and in certain applications it doesn't. It's not a one size fits all. Most customers really have to evaluate that from a couple sets of glasses. They have to look at that as saying, what are they getting in return for giving up their business, or maybe the control of their business, to a supplier? I think they have to evaluate that control versus savings point of view, right? And then they have to evaluate that too from when you're really tied into a centralized supplier, what means do you have to adjust or come back, or maybe use different items inside of those solutions? So I think those are all the common things that our industry is getting educated on today. But a lot of distribution points today are using them for a lot of the right reasons too, right? And they're introducing them as a cost savings, where customers are really challenging suppliers to continue to add cost savings. They bring these devices in that add substantial reoccurring cost savings too.
Right. I'm not sure if you heard our previous podcast, we were talking about you, but one of the things that we say over and over again is it's about trust. And I'll give you a case in point. We've got a significant aerospace machine shop client out in California, Southern California. And as if you know anything about a lot of aerospace parts where there's a lot of hydraulic fluid and other kinds of things running through these components, there's a lot of specialty tools that go to making those, so that these complex shapes are perfect every time. Some of those are called port tools. So you have this very specific port that takes a very specific fitting. So it's a one tool that goes in and makes all of the different shapes in one pass. And that the shape is going to be right because the ratios of all the different profiles on the tool itself is right. So there's less inspection, less everything. Everything about it is just better. Sure. Well, anyway, these tools are very expensive, and everybody who is programming these kinds of CNC equipment to do this, when they go to the tool crib and they say, hey, I need one of these port tools, and they look in the drawer and they say, hey, you got 3 or 4 there, why don't you give me 2? And all of a sudden now there's 2 very expensive port tools out in somebody's toolbox, and then something happens on the next shift, that guy's toolbox is locked, and now they need to get another port tool. There may not be any left in the crib, right? And so that hoarding that goes on just costs so much money to these plants. And it's all because that guy wanted to make sure on his shift he wasn't running out. He was going to be the hero. And so having the vending machines there under control, and people can see very clearly that, hey, if I need it, it's there. I don't need to hoard this. Just tremendous savings. And that trust factor goes up in a big way.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. That's exactly right. The trust thing is enormous. And and how do you get trust? You have to get trust through visibility.
Right.
And,
exactly.
The device,
and even the coil machines. I know we're kind of talking about coil machines as being old technology, but hey, one thing about coil machines, you can see everything that's in there.
Yeah.
And you can see how many there are. So it works out pretty well.
Well, and any good solution is going to be backed by a powerful piece of software that can give you visibility from a data perspective, right? Because the data really tells the story. Any vending machine out there is going to, probably dispense items,
Right.
Some are more reliable than others in our industry, but the reality of it is they're designed to dispense. And that's one aspect of visibility. When I go to the machine, I see it, I believe that it's there, I trust the replenishment cycle. That takes time. But the data side is really important, because the data really tells purchasing, it tells the supervisors, it tells the management level that what we're doing is correct. We're ordering enough, we have the right supply points, whatever those pieces are, because the employees now stop hoarding because they trust that every time they go there, it's available for them to get it, right?
That's right.
And maybe not just that it's available, but the right item is available,
Yeah.
And as you were talking about the specialized tooling, that's drastically important. But think about it from an operator perspective. You know, if every time, if my favorite glove is a medium-sized black dot glove, it's my favorite. It fits me the best. You know, in December it's a little colder, and I need the large for whatever reason. You know, I just need it. But every time I go to that machine, the larges are never ever there. As
Right.
simple as that is, it changes that employee's complete mindset about doing his job.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. And we got a whole crews that are out there working in these plants. And you're right. Those simple things like the right gloves matters.
yes, absolutely.
Mm,
We've seen, unfortunately, we've seen in our time some vending machines get abused and
sure.
misuse of them. And I would say some of that is due to probably restrictions, you know, saying, hey, I
Hmm.
don't trust you to take more than what you should. That's a negative side of
Right.
management. But some of those are because when I go there, they don't have my favorite or the one I'm most comfortable with. Maybe it's not serviced correctly, those types of things. So you see those environments because of those reactions.
Right.
So I think that those are pieces there that kind of build the story of trust and believing in the right product at the right place at the right time.
Hmm.
Because at the end of the day, these are typically used to manage indirect materials, right? It doesn't typically end up on the finished product.
That's right.
The reality of it is, if you have the indirect stuff available, then your finished product typically gets made better, faster, and more efficient for the overall profitability of the company.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that's kind of where I was headed with traditional side, which is kind of brainstorming about what's out there. You kind of touched on, you know, the distribution model. Then you have an end
Hmm.
user model. I don't think that there's really any limit to who. I think the question is what. It really comes down to what are
Right.
you managing, where at, and how much of it, and that may determine the right solution, not just the box.
And also, David, who gets to manage?
Mm,
If it's just the outside vendor that has access to the box, my guess is there aren't too many of those outside vendors who actually produce port tools, right?
yes.
So we may, as customers, be buying our port tools, but we want to put them in that box, and so sometimes those vending machines don't allow access for the actual customer to have access to the inside of the box.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very important aspect to the whole vending problem is who has access
Yeah.
and what do you do with that access?
I think you're exactly right. I think that's the question, and you really have to answer. You know, CribMaster's a little bit in the middle in this conversation, right?
Right.
We have some wonderful customers that are great distributors and those types of things, and we also have some great end users as well. And I
Hmm.
think you have to ask yourself the question: are you owning or are you loaning?
Right.
Because the owning piece, you get to decide what happens in your environment. You get to decide who plays in it, who's responsible, and how it's managed and how it's taken care of. Loaning, you may have to live by a set of rules that you don't always agree with.
Right.
Um, so I think those are important things when you're thinking about your vending solution of understanding what is it really bringing to you. The box is one element. It really is one
Yeah,
element,
that's right.
but it's not this total solution. The
It's
box,
like being an electrician and going on the job, and the only tool that you have is one flathead screwdriver. It's not the whole picture, right? You need a whole bunch of other tools as well, and it's the same thing with these boxes. There's many different flavors and varieties of these tools, and that's all they are. They're tools to meet an end need.
agreed 100%. I think a lot of times, especially traditional vending machines, get put into a category of it's a vending machine and it does it all. It's not. It's just
Right.
it's one part of a total cost saving solution that's being delivered.
That's
And
right.
and most people get lost in the fact that the box is what it is, and they get hung up on it spins at this rate or it doesn't spin, the door opens, whatever those things are about the box, but they forget about what it's really doing. It in its simplest forms is creating a transaction that feeds into a piece of software that really gives you information to go make either corrective action or
Right.
to agree to continue to do what you were doing.
Absolutely. And I want to just tangent here just for a quick second because on a later call, not today, I think what we will have to talk about is what happens with those transactions, and get into the software side and just see all of the different ways that the software itself is really where the magic is, and how that helps with all this point of use that we desire, and that helps us get our jobs done more efficiently. So just
Yeah.
put a pin in that for another call later, is that we will have to do a little deeper dive into the benefits of that software and those, how those transactions work.
I'd agree.
Yeah. So the vending machines now, as you were just saying, you go to it, you ask for something, it gives it to you, it sends a signal back to somebody else that says, hey, you need to replenish what's just been taken. So 100% pull system, which is exactly what we in the lean guys, we espouse to, and we really push systems that way, because you've got to replenish what's been taken in the same rate that it's being taken in order to to make the system work right. So give us a little more behind the transactional side and some of the different options, just a high level of what goes on there.
I'm glad you asked that, because that's kind of where I wanted to go next, was kind of talking about, again, looking at just traditional vending machines, and there's a couple different sizes and shapes and varieties out there, right? Some of the common things though that we hear now is that, hey, I got into this because I was tired of Joe taking too many. That's a common thing we hear, right?
Right.
But when you really peel the onion back and you start talking to other people within the organization, you start talking to purchasing and saying, you know what, they're really interested in knowing how much Department A is using versus Department B is using.
That's right. First shift versus second shift.
Absolutely.
All those things. Yeah.
GL account coding. They want to know that, hey, I just bought 48 dozen pairs of gloves. I need to account for 12 of them going to maintenance and 36 of them going to the paint department, right? Whatever those are, from an accounting perspective, needs to have some visibility to be able to do those things. Well, how nice is it that you could walk up to a machine and authenticate who you are? And if you work for paint every day, it can default who you are, or you can pick from a list or do some cool stuff with maybe scanning a document and it tells you what department you're in. Those are some cool stuff. But what you're really doing is capturing data.
Right.
And with capturing that data, now you get to report to that and say, okay, I want to see my usage by department. Forget the employees in the department. I want to know what the department's using weekly so I can GL account properly.
That's right.
Those are huge advantages to most vending machines today. I would say most vending machines backed with some robust software have those capabilities to tell you not only who, but why, because the why is another question, right?
Right.
And I think then you have to start thinking about the users themselves. Like, we spent a lot of time over the years understanding that, successful vending or point of use solutions are not really successful because the management threw it out there to lock up the product. They're successful because you got the user to buy into the process.
Absolutely.
And when you can get the user to buy in, I always say it's a bottom-up approach. Let the user buy in, make it easier, make it faster, build the trust. And when they do that, the data is in the software and the management gets all the reward from that point, because they can see, correct, they can buy more, they can buy less, they can do all the things that the data is telling them to do. But without that compliance from the user, they don't have any trust in the data that's coming out of the machine. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I'll give you a straight up example of kind of some of the things that you're talking about. One of our big clients had boxes all over their facility, and depending upon what your job was, you required different gloves. So this was a company that dealt with steel sheets, and these steel sheets would get sheared, and those sheared edges would become very, very sharp. So if you were a machine operator, there were cut resistant gloves that you must wear. So when you went up to that vending machine, you could swipe your badge, and that machine would know that, hey, this person is from this department, which means they require these kinds of gloves. And it wouldn't bend the mechanic gloves, which were not, they were ones that had better dexterous feel. They were thin rubber palms and fingers. and wouldn't vend those to them at all, and also wouldn't vend the cut resisting gloves to the mechanics because, hey, the people in the line need those,
That's right.
right? And so by having that ability, they were able to much more control that people did have the right gloves for the job, and if they were consuming far more than they thought, which by the way was always when they had a surge of temporary employees, right? Because they didn't have any other gloves, so they had, you get a surge of temporary employees, you know there's going to be a surge on gloves too.
That's right.
Excuse me. So those were all aspects to the transaction and the software and controlling things. And if they did run out of gloves, there was a big sign on the thing that said, hey, you can't work with the wrong gloves. There is no second best tool in this scenario. You got to go to your supervisor or HR or somebody and say, hey, we don't have the right gloves, you know, so what can we do to make this happen? And they always had surplus, you know, hidden someplace that they could give out, but I mean that was their way of managing that.
Yeah, it's a great point. You know, and a couple other things we haven't kind of talked about. We talked about the visibility or awareness from the employee. Are they, you know, they getting the glove right, putting the right glove in front of them so they don't have to make a decision to it. But there's also another side of that. You know, if the safety council or the PPE director needs to know, hey, why isn't my guy changing his gloves out every fourth day, right?
Right, exactly.
Maybe he's wearing it past the useful life because he's afraid of going and having visibility to it. Maybe there's some information there that if unfortunately if someone was to have an accident, then there's data to support that he didn't have the right one. He didn't retrieve it in the time frame that he was allocated to do that in. So there's the opposite side too.
And that is a fact. I mean, those gloves do wear out, and it wasn't just gloves, by the way. Since that stuff was so sharp, they had Kevlar sleeves and other things that they had to wear as well. But all of that was tracked, just like you're saying, you know. And if people weren't replacing them, especially in the summertime, because it's hot in there, and your sleeves get nasty from perspiration and other things, they don't want MRSA. Right, so they would ask people to, hey, every second or third day, change your arm sleeves too.
Yeah, exactly. So the device really becomes much more of a management tool or a manager to make sure that they're getting what they need when they need it and to the quantities they need them in.
That's right.
And it helps both sides, keeps them safe in that scenario, keeps them safe.
Right.
It also keeps the organization at a lean kind of mindset. They have what they need for their employees to be productive within the parameters that they've set for them to do from that point.
And we're a big proponent of making decisions based upon data. And of course, by having the ability to collect that data is a real big deal to help learn and make better decisions and evolve as a company. You know, there's really no substitute for that.
Yeah, I agree. I think that and it's hard to do it without it sometimes, right? Especially once you're used to seeing it, then it's hard to do it without it. But a lot of organizations without automation have not, they don't have a whole lot of data to go on unless they go out and do truly time studies, case studies, physically over a given period of time. These become your automated case studies in live production environments from that point of view.
And think about how much money you'd spend just sending somebody to go around and count stuff, you know. And it's not even stuff that's going in the product. It's stuff that you need to have in the plant so you can make the product, but it doesn't go in the product.
Very true.
It's a lot of money to count something that really has no value added, you know, to the final product.
It's very true. Well, and a lot of organizations take these products and kind of broad swipe them across an accounting book, meaning we'll just put an extra percentage on every job, right?
That's right.
We believe we spend 13% on this job in indirect materials, and we'll just do that across the board.
That's right.
And what they don't know is that job just ran them at 27%, and the job before it ran it at 11%, and they're not profitable as what they thought they should have been, and it's all because of indirect. So these things, if evaluated and deployed properly, have substantial data points and information to be gathered to offer savings that maybe they haven't considered. Again, traditional vending was released and introduced to the marketplace for the simple fact of point of use. And
Right.
today it's still relevant, right? It's still
Yeah,
extremely
absolutely. Probably even more so.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we get lost in some of the things that they're used for. The vending machines is to a certain degree. There's lots of different avenues to go out and cost justify. But
Sure.
point of use is probably one of the most powerful ones. If you can keep a guy in the area to work for the majority of the day, your cost savings goes through the roof, and your product profits should go through the roof as well.
Absolutely. So, David, I think that we've had a really good discussion today. You brought up a couple of points that makes me think that we're going to have many more of these, and I'm looking forward to every one of those. On the next time you call in, we'll also have Michael Myers with us.
Okay.
And for the sake of the lean guys, we call him Mustang Mike. So we'll have fun with that when we get a chance to chat with him again.
I look
So
forward to it.
anyway, yeah, so thank you very much for joining me today, and I hope that we get a chance to do this again real soon.
I'd welcome it. Thanks for the opportunity.
No sweat. So for Two Lean Guys, peace out. If you like the content, please subscribe to the Two Lean Guys, and also make sure that you like this video and share it. Thank you.